Recalling the people she had seen in the hall earlier, Saiko Busujima felt a little unsettled. In the present situation, any bit of extra strength would be invaluable. Natsume Yuu said, "The only real variable is the ultimate lucky student, Nagi Makoto, but his will is very firm. He won't join the other side." The same goes for Fukawa Tuko, or rather, Genocide or Show. "She's dangerous. She's a serial killer," Natsume continued. "If she's already infatuated with Togami Byakuya, there's no need to try to persuade her. If she's not, it'll be impossible to convince her. As for everyone else," he added, "even if they're turned now, any action they take won't come until night. They were pawns, not a deus ex machina. Even if some were induced to betray their allies, any real move would still be nocturnal." Kirigiri Kyuko nodded. "Natsume's right. Right now it depends on whether Ugami can master that breathing technique first, or whether Enoshima Junko's new arrangements make the first move," she went on. Butterfly Kanai tilted her head. "Is that so? Then we should prepare dinner ourselves tonight. Could that be an opportunity to act?" From Kanai's point of view, if the mastermind suspected anything, they should strike first, maybe even overturn the rules of the game and move immediately. After all, the initiative belonged to the other side. Doma Umaru shook her head. "Probably not. Even though Enoshima Junko is twisted, she still follows her own rules. When she was exposed," Umaru recalled, "even knowing she would suffer tortures before she died, she still accepted it and walked in herself." Chitanda Eru's eyes widened. "That's impressive." Hearing Umaru's words, Chitanda felt a strange sort of admiration. To adhere completely to one's own twisted principles, she couldn't fully understand Junko, but she respected the conviction. Is it true luck can be ultimate? Chitanda wondered aloud. Yotsuya Miko muttered, "What a strange world." Doma grinned. "And yours isn't much better." Natsume added, "The ultimate lucky student is chosen from millions, to be pulled from so many people and survive that incident. That's luck." Saiko conceded. "When you put it like that, it is luck." Kato Megumi asked, "Busujima-senpai, have you found anything?" Saiko answered, "There's no specific date in that file, but from the clothing it's a summer uniform. It must be from this past summer. I can't narrow it down further." Umaru immediately launched into a stream of survival advice. "About timing, we can stockpile supplies in advance. If there's money, we can fortify the house or dig a basement. And if we could get guns. Using firearms would attract lots of zombies, but they're powerful," she continued, rattling off possibilities. Butterfly Kanai frowned. "Xiao Mai, why are you so excited?" Umaru scratched her head. "Sorry, I just used to watch zombie movies and play doomsday survival games. Sometimes I fantasize about this stuff." Natsume and Kato both smiled. "I get it," Natsume said. "I can see where you're coming from." Yotsuya flushed. "I hate it, but my brother dragged me to those movies. I used to dream about them." "Sounds like nightmares," Natsume teased. Saiko smiled faintly. "It's fine. Doma's suggestions actually gave me a lot of ideas." "Of course," Umaru beamed. "These are solutions I worked out after thinking through many scenarios." Saiko smoothed the hem of her sleeve. "Real guns are out of the question, but we have several real swords at home. I suppose I'll have to carry one when I go to school." Umaru's eyes bulged. "You're still planning to go to school in that situation. If the virus hasn't broken out yet, I'm still a student." Saiko replied calmly, abandoning that would bring shame on the Busujima family. Chitanda sighed softly. "Everyone has principles they adhere to." Butterfly Kane's voice softened. "Does Busujima need money? If you do, I can ask Master for some gold." Saiko shook her head. "Thank you, but I have some pocket money. If that's not enough, I could borrow from my father, though I may never be able to repay him." She tried to lighten the mood with a small joke, but the thought of what might come later made Doma and the others fall silent. Yotsuya hesitated, then spoke up. Can't the virus be stopped before it happens? We could warn the police." Kirigiri looked thoughtful. The source is unknown. From what she had seen, Kirigiri had a sense of Saiko's personality, strong, composed, principled. The fact Saiko hadn't suggested going to stop the outbreak meant the file didn't indicate any clear origin. "And even if there were a source," Kirigiri added, "the idea is too absurd. No one would believe it if a high school student showed up and told them." Chitanda nodded earnestly. "If a stranger came to me and said such things, I wouldn't believe them either." Yotsuya's shoulders slumped. That's true. I was speaking like everyone over there already knows it will happen. I forgot they'd treat it like a movie. She brightened suddenly. But this chat group can send things. If Busujima-senpai needs supplies, can't we just send them directly? That's right. How did I forget? Umaru's eyes lit up with new energy. Natsume cocked his head. What is it? Kato leaned forward. You look like you figured something out. Umaru grinned. I was just thinking about Kirigiri's situation earlier. If she beat Ikusaba Mukuro, she still couldn't easily get out, so why not send a set of tools to break down doors? I remember Kanai has explosives, she went on. A wall should be no problem. If they could send modern tools, the sealed exits, the copper walls, and iron barriers could be breached. Junko's rules would start to crumble. That would work, Chitanda exclaimed. We could avoid a direct fight. I was so absorbed in the scenario over there, I actually forgot the chat group's functions, Yotsuya admitted. Kirigiri's expression turned serious. That's a good suggestion, but I have something more important than escaping right now. She had thought of sending tools herself when Butterfly Kane and Natsume started transferring items, but Ikusaba Mukuro's presence stopped her from pursuing that option further. And after Natsume told them about the biggest, most despair-inducing incident in history, Kirigiri's priorities quietly shifted. Kato asked, puzzled, more important than getting out? Natsume's voice was steady. It should be defeating the Enoshima Junko sisters. Chapter 102, Section 102. That's right. If we can't handle this kind of enemy here, it'll only get worse once we're out, Kirigiri Kyoko said, already decided. Thinking of Enoshima Junko's terrifying talent and the raw destructive power she and her sister could wield, Kirigiri had resolved they needed to be contained here and now. But they can do this inside a school. What will happen if they're loose in the world? Butterfly Kane shivered at the thought. Saiko Busujima folded her arms. This teaching building restricts us, yes, but it restricts them as well. Better to stop them here than let them disappear into the outside. Kato Megumi and the others finally showed signs of understanding. Everyone, given a chance, wanted to escape danger. But Kirigiri and the few who had been up against the worst of it had no illusions. Neutralizing the threat took priority. All the floors are locked, Kirigiri added. We'll need your help to break through later. They would have to get through the locked levels to reach Enoshima Junko. Relying only on Ogami Sakura felt risky. If you need anything, just ask, Butterfly Kanai offered. Natsume Yuu shrugged. No master key is going to help. At best, we'll force our way in. Simple explosives shouldn't be an issue. Thank you, Kirigiri replied. Chitanda Eru hesitated. If the items came from the chat group, it might be hard to explain where they came from if anyone asks. If it's too hard to explain, Natsume cut in, then don't explain. Why give them the method? Chitanda's eyes lit up. I see. Just refuse. That works. The conversation drifted and settled into a tense plan. Yotsuya Miko, still shaken by the strange encounter earlier that night, was too curious to sleep. She didn't want to miss whatever came next. Kato Megumi and the others, who had trained in breathing techniques, could afford to go without rest. By 6 in the evening, the super high school level elites were gathering. They sat around a long table. At one end, Kirigiri occupied a solitary place while the others eyed her. That big one hasn't answered since you called her. You didn't do anything to her, did you? Demanded Dahe Tian Wen-tu, the pompadour-sporting super high school level biker gang leader, glancing at Kirigiri. His remark drew everyone's attention. Suspicious glances aimed toward her. I believe Kirigiri Kyoko must have her reasons, said the super high school level moral committee member with short, messy black hair. But it's dinner time. It's not good she's still not coming out. Here they come, Doma Umaru announced as the attention shifted. As chatter died down, Kirigiri remained composed. She's fine. There's a reason she isn't here. Togami Byakuya, face flat with contempt, pushed his glasses up. What reason? You found the mastermind. Is that it? He had noticed Kirigiri walking back and forth after they left the gym, searching the grounds. As the heir to the Togami conglomerate, he prided himself on being the most capable person in the room. He hadn't found anything, and the idea that an ordinary student might, let alone Kirigiri, irked him. Nagi Makoto raised a hand, puzzled. Does this have anything to do with Ugami Sakura being called away and not answering? It would be smoother if Ugami Sakura were here. Asahina Aoi agreed, just as practical. If they were confronting the mastermind, the strongest fighter should be present. A Monokuma jumped up on the table, chuckling in that twisted, mechanical way. One of the black and white bear's eyes glinted red like a batwing. I'm curious too, it said in that sing-song voice. Do you really know who the mastermind is? Yasuhiro Hagakure sneered. You're showing up too, even with your identity unknown. Oh dear, Monokuma waved its paws, clearly amused. Without clues, can she really name me? Every gaze fixed on Kirigiri, waiting for an answer. She stood, calm and measured. Enoshima Junko, she said quietly. The announcement detonated through the room. What? How is that possible? Isn't Enoshima Junko right here? All eyes snapped to the figure the name pointed to. Enoshima Junko, a girl among them, went crimson with outrage and panic, her expression a mix of incredulous hurt and theatrics. Are you kidding me? I'm right here, and you're calling me the mastermind, she shouted. Do you have any evidence? You're trying to frame me because I'm about to do something tonight. Her voice trembled, her eyes filled with tears that seemed primed to spill. The performance was so immediate, so convincing, that Kato Megumi couldn't help but admire the acting. Amazing. If I didn't know the truth, she murmured. Does she really not have the super high school level artist talent? Yotsuya Miko wondered aloud. Natsume Yuu shrugged. Soldiers train to disguise themselves. Good actors make missions succeed. Chitanda Eru nodded slowly. It makes sense. Butterfly Kane shivered again. These sisters are terrifying. Exactly as Kirigiri suggested, Doma Umaru said. If they're dangerous, it's best to subdue them here. Even those who knew what was actually happening were impressed by the manipulation and quick thinking on display. Monokuma leaned forward, delighted. I'm curious too, it repeated. Without any proof, can she really unmask the mastermind? Togami's lips curled in annoyance, but the room buzzed with a new, anxious energy. Everyone waited to see whether Kirigiri could back up her accusation, or whether the situation would spiral into the kind of chaos only Monokuma seemed to relish. As Makoto Negi and the others stared at an expression that did not look faked at all, suspicion bubbled up among them. Wait, like Junko said, you need evidence for something like that. Makoto's head was spinning. He spread both hands and shouted. It was what everyone was thinking. Empty words wouldn't convince anyone. And even if you're trying to slander someone, after making a scene like that, if someone dies tonight, the suspicion will fall squarely on Kyoko Kirigiri. Makoto froze as he realized how illogical Kirigiri's behavior had been. If she truly wanted to point blame, this dramatic declaration only made her the most obvious suspect. Once he pointed that out, everyone reacted. Kirigiri's action made little sense. If both sides had reasons to suspect, the situation should have been more careful. Kyoko, can you show us your evidence? Sayaka Maizono, her face tense with confusion, demanded. There is no evidence. Kirigiri's voice was calm, almost icy. The answer flew in the face of everything a detective stood for. But she could not say the truth. She had joined a chat that spanned worlds and known how the future would play out. Before she finished dealing with Enoshima Junko, she could not lay out that trump card. Ah. For a moment, everyone just stared at the cold-faced girl, stunned. Up in the monitoring room, Monokuma cackled, covering his mouth with his paws. Ooh-poo-poo-poo-poo. Our memories have been cleared. Actually, you've already spent 2 years at the academy. Evidence about that is recorded in the headmaster's office. Kirigiri's voice cut through Monokuma's laughter, crisp and direct. The laughter faded. Monokuma's head tilted as if trying to peer into Kirigiri. Junko, well, the girl playing Junko, glanced at Monokuma. Makoto and the others were frozen by the weight of the statement. 2 years? The idea was so absurd, their brains struggled to accept it. Only Kirigiri's clear, cold voice remained in the silence. You're kidding, right? The pompadour-haired biker practically snarled, eyes wide. She's saying 2 years have passed? Tuko Fukawa, timid and clutching her books, whispered, She really said something strange. Selus Daiatia, darkly dressed and composed, muttered, What a boring joke. Byakuya Togami crossed his arms, disbelief written on his face. Everyone else reacted with skepticism. Such a claim was simply too bizarre, like waking up 2 years later to find the world ruined. It's normal not to believe her, Butterfly Kane said kindly. If it were me, I'd be suspicious too. Me too, Eruchitanda agreed. Having your memories erased is like wiping away the time you've lived, Saiko Busujima added. Makoto tried to stay calm. Even if there's evidence in the headmaster's office, we can't get there from here. And how did you know in the first place? He looked directly at Kirigiri, desperate for some logical explanation. From the monitors above them, Junko laughed loudly, delighted. Ooh poo 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 poo. I don't know how she knows, but this just got interesting. A girl who knows the truth, and no one believes her. And if only one person is left at the end, I'll tell that one person the truth was here from the very first day. Imagine their face. Her grin widened into something almost feral. I'm not saying this to play detective. I'm telling you. No, I'm telling Junko. The rules of the game change now. Junko's laughter froze when Kirigiri's voice pierced the room. The smile drained from her face, and she stared at the monitor, suddenly alert. Kyoko? Junko whispered, more tense than usual. Kyoko walked to the side and pointed at the screen as if her finger were the tip of a blade. Bang! There was a thunderous crash. The heavy wooden door at the far end of the hall exploded into a storm of splinters and dust. Through the debris strode a solid figure, all muscle and intent, white hair trailing, eyes like knives. She moved like a battering ram, and then, with the force of a cannon, the woman hurled a fist through the broken doorway. For the girl behind the monitor, the one everyone treated as Enoshima Junko, that moment felt like a weight falling. An intuition honed on battlefields screamed at her. Take that blow head on, and you'll be crippled or worse. There was no time to think, barely time to breathe. She reacted instinctively. Her knees bent, she twisted, and then she rolled away like a rabbit. She hit the floor, sprang up, and turned back to face the intruder. When she looked where she had just been standing, the massive fist had stopped inches from the spot. The woman who had thrown it, Ugami Sakura, was standing there, her arm retracted, her eyes locked on the figure on the monitor. Indeed, Ugami said, expression unreadable, Kirigiri Kyuko was right. Sakura's punch had been deliberate. She had not expected to hit the girl on the screen. She had been testing whether the target could dodge. Until then, Sakura had been skeptical. Could Kirigiri really have taught that strange breathing technique? If the woman posing as Enoshima Junko were really Ikusaba Mukuro, trained in war and survival, she would dodge. If she was just a superficial Jaru, she wouldn't. Sakura had agreed to test it. At the last instant, she would pull her blow away. Kirigiri had known Sakura's doubts and accepted the plan without hesitation. The test proved it. Mukuro had the reflexes to evade. That meant Kirigiri's claim wasn't a bluff. Monokuma exploded in fury, his voice shrill. You stinking so! Why did you avoid it? That was just a test. That guy was testing you, he ranted as if personally offended. Why aren't you dead yet, you so? You ruined my plan. Mukuro turned away from the barking bear, cheeks flushed despite herself. My body reacted on its own, she said, embarrassed. She glared at the constantly hopping Monokuma. If you call me that, Junko, I'll be very upset. Chapter 104, Section 104. Although she said it with a smirk, Ikusaba Mukuro's face was unusually flushed, a silly grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. She clearly relished her sister's curses. The soft murmur stunned those who had not yet fully reacted. Is what Kirigiri said true? Yamada Hifumi, the ultimate doujin author, stumbled back, panic in his voice. If that bear is Monokuma, then who is this person? Fujisaki Chihiro, the ultimate programmer, cried out, terrified. Small and timid in appearance, Chihiro's voice and clothes made him seem like a girl, but he was a boy. If that's the case, doesn't that mean what Kirigiri said is true? Togami Byakuya remembered Kirigiri's earlier words, and his expression soured instantly. How could something like that really be possible? Asahina Aoi's eyes widened in disbelief. Fukawa Tuko, who stood nearby, was worse. She fainted to the floor, only to sit up moments later like a zombie. The timid literary girl had vanished. When her tongue flicked out like a snake and her red eyes gleamed with madness, a cold, arrogant laugh escaped her. Aha! How interesting! They even wiped away my memories. Fukawa Tuko planted her hands on her hips and laughed exaggeratedly, her former timidity gone. What's going on here? Yasuhiro Hagakure sank to the ground, propping himself up with his hands as he scrambled backward. I didn't expect something like this to happen. Even Selus Diatia, usually composed, looked troubled. Having been through many high-stakes matches, she still found this hard to process. Dissociative identity disorder. Nagi Makoto glanced at Fukawa Tuko, uncertain. Yotsuya Miko, what's going on? Saiko Busujima muttered. The contrast is huge. Chitanda Eru, whose associative skills were limited but whose memory was sharp, spoke up. Dissociative identity disorder, also called multiple personality disorder. Kato Megumi admitted, I've never seen this before. Doma Umaru added, even knowing about it, it's still shocking. Butterfly Kane, shocked by the way Ikusaba Mukuro addressed Enoshima Junko, asked, aren't they sisters? Natsume Yuu commented dryly, one's got a sister complex, the other is sadistic. Butterfly Kane frowned, unfamiliar with those terms. Sister complex? S? Don't think too much about it, Natsume said. Just know it's not a good thing. The sudden changes stunned Naegi Makoto and the others, and even the group itself voiced outrage. This is cheating. This hot-blooded atmosphere doesn't suit our game at all. Monokuma halted his rant to glare at Kirigiri Kyuko. If our lives are the stakes, then we might as well not play at all. Kirigiri Kyuko's expression went cold, showing a rare flash of anger. Tsk, whatever. Monokuma clicked his tongue, annoyed, and then turned his gaze to Ikusaba Mukuro. You stupid so. Deal with these two quickly, so our game can continue. Although being exposed ruined some of the game's fun, Enoshima Junko thought that finishing everyone off and going outside to an already chaotic world might still be entertaining. This person is very strong. I don't have much confidence either. Mukuro casually removed her wig, revealing short black hair. Her tone grew serious as she slipped a bright dagger from a thigh holster. She crouched and held the blade in a reverse grip, her sharp eyes fixed on Ugami Sakura. Ignoring Enoshima Junko's disdain, as expected, just a braying female animal, completely useless. Mukuro focused entirely on Ugami Sakura. Despite her own stirring excitement, she no longer showed the earlier affectation. I won't be able to hold back later. If you can't take it and die, don't blame me. Sakura warned in a heavy voice. With the limited time they had, even the ultimate martial artist couldn't fully control the sudden surge of power brought on by the breathing technique. Mukuro said nothing. Her gaze searched Sakura for a weakness, though she knew the warning held no bluff. A palpable sense of danger radiated from the woman before her, as if at any moment she would pounce and rip Mukuro apart with fists and feet. But Mukuro, the ultimate despair's soldier, did not fear it. She relished it. Her body and mind hummed with a manic readiness. Inhale, Ugami Sakura breathed, and then drew in a massive lungful of air. Muscles visibly bulged, bones and tendons popped and creaked. Her already formidable frame seemed to swell, filling the hall with a terrifying aura. Even those unskilled in combat sensed it. So scary, Fujisaki Chihiro blurted, trembling as if confronted by a high-level predator. Yasuhiro Hagakure crouched in a corner, eyes wide. How amazing! Thankfully she's not a cute boy, otherwise I couldn't bring myself to kill her. Fukawa Tuko, now in her genocider Seo persona, showed a hint of relief. If someone that powerful were a boy who matched her tastes and she couldn't kill them, that would be unbearable. The others also felt the oppressive aura and instinctively backed away. I can't wait any longer, Mukuro finally decided. Observing for weakness any longer would only give Sakura time to prepare. Her long-booted legs slammed the floor. Bang! Mukuro lowered her body and launched herself like a leopard. In the span of a heartbeat, she covered over 10 meters. As she closed, her dagger, held reverse like a snake's fang, flashed and thrust for Sakura's abdomen. As a trained martial artist, Mukuro knew that vital points were heavily guarded, and attempting a one-hit kill against a larger opponent could be suicidal. An abdominal strike, however, offered a chance. Just as the blade neared, two thick fingers sliced through the air. They arrived after Mukuro's strike, but struck first, clamping onto the dagger like pincers. A massive fist followed, a bowl-like hand swinging like a cannonball. The wind it produced howled so fiercely that Mukuro knew a direct hit would end the fight. She dropped the dagger hand instantly, lowering her body further and driving her right foot forward. The huge arm whistled overhead, the wind lashed at her exposed neck. Her short black hair whipped and tore at the edges under the force. Mukuro felt the power. Such strength was almost beyond belief. Even though she had expected it, the force hit before Ikusaba Mukuro could fully brace for it. It still surprised her. Thoughts flickered through her mind like lightning. Power erupted from her slender core. She twisted, trying to get behind Ugami Sakura to seize her waist and execute a big back throw. From the corner of her eye, she saw the muscles on Sakura's right leg, the one closest to her, bunch and harden. Those dark, solid muscles looked like stone. Just seeing them told her how much strength they contained. "Get away!" A warning screamed through her head as her body hesitated. The next instant, that thigh, like an iron pillar, sliced through the air. In an instant, it was upon her. "It's too late. I can only block it." Mukuro's mind raced. She crossed her arms over her chest. The kick struck with a thunderous crack. Bones snapped. Ikusaba Mukuro felt her arms break under the monstrous force, her arms driven into her chest. Her breath stopped for a moment, as if the world had been punched out of her. Then she was swept off her feet like a thrown football, sent flying backward. Ugami Sakura let the dagger she'd been holding fall from between her fingers. Sakura took a step forward. The power in her seemed to make the room itself tremble. Her right fist, which had somehow been clenched, retracted behind her like a drawn slingshot. She stepped again, closing the distance to the flying Mukuro, and swung that fist in a semicircle. The air resisted it, as if it were too heavy to pass through. Everyone's breath caught. Mukuro, still airborne and having not yet found purchase to divert herself, had no leverage to dodge. Anger flashed in her eyes. This was the first time, aside from that one person, that she'd been overpowered like this. Suddenly something black and white leaped forward. The heavy fist slammed into Monokuma. Fur tore. The overbearing blow shredded the plush exterior, scattering black and white remnants and exposing its steel interior. Bat-like wings hovered in the air, glowing red. The corners of its evil grin spread into a silent, mocking smile. Explosion? The morning replayed in Sakura's mind. The biker who had attacked Monokuma, and Enoshima Junko's first warning, making it explode. She saw Mukuro in midair, adjusting to defend. "Damn it!" Sakura ground out, wrenching her fist to a stop and leaping back. "Watch out!" she shouted to everyone. Kirigiri Kyoko's voice rose in the same instant. Those who had seen the morning's scene, Naegi Makoto and the others, reacted immediately. They turned and dived back. A blinding light detonated through the hall. Flames bloomed and billowed like a rising tide, sweeping in a rolling wave of heat. The shockwave rippled through everything. Plates and pots on the dining table shattered and were hurled into the air. Sofas were toppled and thrown aside. "How could I just let you escape?" Sakura roared. Feeling the impact abate, she pushed forward through the remaining flames, her gaze fixed on the direction Mukuro had been flung. "They'll be okay, right?" Chitanda Eru cried, watching the explosion and worrying aloud. They were already on the ground before the blast, and there were so many things between them and the explosion, Natsume Yuu replied. Before Ugami and Mukuro fought, Negi and the others had spread out, giving them room. Now those obstacles had helped protect them. "That's good," Butterfly Kane said. So powerful," Yotsuya Miko exclaimed, half in awe. "My eyes couldn't follow them at all," Saiko Busujima added. The exchange had lasted only 2 seconds, but to her it was monstrous. Lightning speed, strength well beyond what one would expect of women. Only in the briefest pauses could she see clearly. The rest blurred. If she'd gone in, she felt she would have died in an instant. "Their reactions are incredible," Doma Umaru said. "And their offense never stops," Kato Megumi added. "We still can't match them." "Can you even see them properly?" Yotsuya asked. "I can see, but I couldn't hope to beat them in a fight," Chitanda admitted. They'd only trained for half a month. There was a gap in raw conditioning and an even bigger one in real, life-or-death combat. Games sharpened reflexes, but nothing compared to fighting for your life. "Such strength? I can't compare," Butterfly Kane murmured, remembering the scene. "Her physique is far stronger than yours," Natsume said to someone, then added with a hint of legend. "Plus, Ugami Sakura's been training since she was a child. They say she started fighting before she could sit in a stroller." "That's ridiculous," Saiko said, though the display had made it sound less like an exaggeration. As the smoke and heat subsided, Kirigiri Kyuko pushed herself up from the ground. Her ears rang from the close blast and her head spun. It was hard to get a bearing. Still, the matter at hand was urgent. She forced herself on her feet and saw that another doorway had been thrown wide. The path Ugami Sakura and Ikusaba Mukuro had taken. She stumbled forward, caught herself on the doorframe, and glanced back. Genocider Sio, I know you're still awake. This affects whether we can get out. I'll leave these people to you. With that, Kirigiri steadied herself, braced against the wall for a second, and hurried after them. Chapter 106, Section 106. To keep Enoshima Junko from capturing the others after Ugami Sakura had left, Kirigiri Kyoko had no choice but to ask Genocider Sio for help. Blesh, blesh, protect these people? Genocider stuck her tongue out as usual, making a dissatisfied sound. Her exposed tongue gathered dust. She bletched again. You stinky fellow, protecting these young masters? You'll owe me. Togami Byakuya pushed himself up, adjusting his glasses with one hand as he appraised Genocider. Understood. Genocider didn't look offended at all. Instead, a thrill crept across her face. This look, it's exactly like the one the person used when pretending to be Enoshima Junko. Asahina Aoi frowned and complained. If my luck is useful for once, I can't just stand here watching Ugami and the others fight. Negi Makoto shoved the sofa off himself after rolling free, then stood and shook his head to clear it. He fixed his gaze on the direction Kirigiri had gone and started toward it. The others exchanged glances, stared at the battered room, and followed. Using the momentum from the explosion, Ikusaba Mukuro had smashed the door open and headed down the corridor. The bones in my arms are broken. I can't fight anymore, she reported loudly for Enoshima Junko to hear. Her delicate face was slick with cold sweat, and she bit her lip hard. Adrenaline had kept the pain at bay earlier. Now that it faded, the pain hit in waves. She endured it without a sound. Useless so! Enoshima Junko's voice crackled through the corridor speakers, sharp with anger. Then she suppressed it. She knew Mukuro hadn't planned the explosion. She calmed herself and gave orders. Forget it. That blast won't stop the monster for long. Retreat for now. Head to the stairwell. I'll open the door for you when you get there. As the so-called ultimate analyst, Junko reacted fast. After seeing Mukuro get knocked back, she had ordered Monokuma to go up and self-destruct. If it could hurt Ugami Sakura, or ideally take her out, all the better. If not, it would at least slow her. Mukuro's survival was expendable. Fine if she was saved along the way, but not necessary if she wasn't. I understand, Mukuro answered tersely and kept running despite the pain. Her broken arms slowed her, though, and a beast-like roar echoed behind her, heavy, pounding footsteps getting closer and closer. From the sound alone, she knew the thing was rapidly gaining on her. That monster is chasing you. It's getting close really fast, Junko confirmed over the line. At this speed, I won't make it to the stairwell before she catches up. What should I do? Mukuro asked, breath ragged. Try to stall for time. I'll call all the other Monokumas. Junko's reply was quick. She didn't explain the rest of her plan. I understand. Mukuro kept going. A tidal momentum of sound surged from behind. I've caught up? Ugami Sakura's steady gaze fixed on the limping figure ahead. Her already impressive speed intensified, and in a single breath she closed the distance. Her hand, broad like a cattail fan, shot out to grab Mukuro. Expecting it, Mukuro leapt, but her injuries held her back. Before she could land, a large hand seized the back of her neck and suspended her in midair. She didn't stop because of that. Using the grip on her neck as a fulcrum, Mukuro twisted her trained waist and abdomen. Her booted legs swept in a horizontal kick, but one of Ugami Sakura's fists arrived first, heavy and precise, crashing into Mukuro's stomach. Mukuro's eyes unfocused, and a spray of blood and saliva spilled from her mouth. When the others arrived, they saw Ugami Sakura exhale long and slow, holding Mukuro by the nape with one hand, the girl limp. Mukuro's pupils were unfocused. She hadn't come to yet. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Did she die? Yasuhiro Hagakure asked, face pale. She's not moving at all, and there's so much blood. Yamada Hifumi trembled and stared at Ugami Sakura, frightened. Several others shared that panic. Their memories of this period had been wiped. They didn't remember the worst, despair-inducing incident in history. Even though Kirigiri had told them about it, they didn't have the personal memory. Hearing a retelling didn't make it real the way seeing the aftermath did. Don't forget, that mastermind wanted us to kill each other. Celeus Diotea said coldly, flipping her spiral twin tails over her shoulder. To someone who had gambled everything many times, this scene was small fry compared to other bloodier stakes. She's not dead yet. Kirigiri Kyoko knelt beside Mukuro, pressing the girl's jaw gently, and detected a faint pulse. Her vitality is strong, just as you'd expect from someone who's been on the battlefield. Ugami Sakura set Mukuro gently on the floor and allowed herself a small nod of admiration. To take that punch in her condition and not die immediately, that kind of resilience was impressive. But if she doesn't get treatment soon, she won't pull through. Sakura's assessment made things clear even to non-medical eyes. The blow had likely ruptured internal organs in Mukuro's abdomen. Without timely care, she would still die. What should we do? Naegi asked hesitantly, looking down at Mukuro. Despite the threats that had forced them to turn on one another, no one had died yet here, so the hatred for the mastermind hadn't reached its peak. More than that, these were still high school kids in their current memories. Taking a life was still unthinkable. Togami Byakuya turned to Genocider Seo, his voice cold and commanding. You've killed so many people. This one's on you. Genocider puckered her brows. She had no interest in hurting a girl, but a direct order from Togami put her in an awkward spot. I've always preferred handsome boys. Maizono Sayaka's eyes lit up as she looked at Mukuro. That's right. Her accomplice is in our hands. Can't we just bargain with Enoshima Junko and get out? Daihatin Wentu brightened at the idea, then quickly hardened. Don't be ridiculous. With that explosion, Junko clearly didn't care whether Mukuro lived. Togami shrugged off the pessimism. How will we know unless we try? Daihatin Wentu's face tightened, but with hope before him, he couldn't let it die. He bent and looked at the others. Hey, who's going to help me move her? Then he spun around and shouted to the others. Remembering the fighting power Ikusaba Mukuro had just shown, everyone hesitated for a moment, but when they thought about the chance to escape, their resolve wavered. I'll do it. Yasuhiro Hagakure stepped forward, teeth chattering with fear. You should leave first. I just heard Enoshima Junko say she was going to send more Monokumas. Ugami Sakura scanned the two of them with an indifferent look, then forced herself to steady her breathing. Yasuhiro let out a frantic cry. If there was another explosion here, they'd be crushed. You should have said that earlier. Daihatin Wentu's eye twitched. He started to bolt back the way they'd come. When he looked, though, he saw Celeus Diotea and Togami Byakuya, calm as ever, standing frozen. He had to stop. Aren't you running away? Ugami Sakura tilted her head and regarded the unmoving students. We can't just let Ugami-san fight alone. Naegi Makoto swallowed the panic rising in his chest. His body trembled, but his voice was steady. It will be safer by your side. Kirigiri Kyuko crouched next to Ikusaba Mukuro and began searching her body. She remembered the blade she had drawn from Mukuro's thigh earlier. An idea flickered through her mind. Her hand bumped into something cold and hard. Joy lit her purple eyes and she drew out the object. A handgun. Ishimaru Kiyotaka's voice went up in surprise. You can use that? Let me. Daihatin Wentu grinned and moved to grab it. Kirigiri looked at him without speaking. Her purple eyes were as cold and still as ice, and in that silence, Daihatin Wentu felt his step freeze. Ugami Sakura's calm gaze landed on him too. Though they all stood on the same side, knowing Enoshima Junko's capabilities, Kirigiri had earned a greater share of their trust. Letting anyone with a weapon stand in front of her made Ugami uneasy. Without saying a word, the atmosphere stopped his forward motion. You should use it instead, Kirigiri said with an awkward smile. Daihatin Wentu stepped back into the group, muttering a strained "Upupupu." Before anyone could respond, Monokuma's metallic laughter echoed down the corridor. More than a dozen Monokumas shuffled into view. Junko had intended this as a game, a little amusement, and with Ikusaba Mukuro and the leverage she'd had against Ugami Sakura, she hadn't expected to need many Monokumas. Now she hadn't brought enough. I didn't expect it to get this far, the leading Monokuma said, its grin unmoved by the danger. It scanned the crowd as if feasting on the panic. Hey, Enoshima Junko, if you let us go, we'll give this person back to you. Daihatin Wentu shot back from the crowd. That's right, your accomplice is about to die. Yamada Hifumi's voice chimed in too, dozens of hopeful eyes fixed on Monokuma. Ah, is that so not dead yet? Monokuma glanced at Ikusaba Mukuro sprawled on the ground and feigned surprise. Looking at her, she seems close anyway. It doesn't matter. Her tone was flat, as if talking about an insect in the road. Around them, others reacted. Chitanda Eru, eyes wide with disbelief. Are these two really sisters? She had never had siblings, and the idea of such a bond had always felt beautiful to her. Enoshima Junko's words made that beauty seem obscene. Butterfly Kanae, furious, I can't stand her. After being attacked by that demon, her younger sister had been one of the only family members left. She valued family fiercely. Junko's indifference made her blood boil. Yotoko, she really is infuriating. She, too, had a younger brother and felt the same contempt for someone who treated family so carelessly. Saiko Busujima, cold and calculating. Well, she's the one who could have caused that kind of incident. Even she felt a measure of grim acceptance that Junko's actions were consistent with what she was capable of. Natsume Yuu and Doma Umaru said little. Compared to the original version, where Junko had personally killed her sister, this felt like a lesser cruelty. What? How could this be? She's completely inhuman. Those still clinging to hope cried out, partly because their plan had failed, and partly because Junko's callousness shattered any illusions of camaraderie. She's your comrade, Nagi Makoto demanded, fury and disbelief mingling in his voice. Monokuma's gaze, like a pair of bat wings, dropped to Nagi. That kind of hopeful line is disgusting. The doll's contempt cut through the corridor. Then it turned to Ugami Sakura and sneered, taunting an old wound. Your dojo is precious to you, isn't it? And that opponent and lover lying in that hospital bed. The passage seemed to vibrate. Ugami Sakura's body shot forward as if loosed from a bow. The gust of air she tore through made Kirigiri Kyuko lurch from her stance. In an instant, Ugami was in front of Monokuma, legs in a low, powerful stance, hips twisted, fists coiled like a drawn bowstring. Her white hair whipped around her face, and her eyes were wide, raw with anger. You're unforgivable, she roared. The sound rolled like thunder through the corridor. Everyone's ears rang. Her muscles, wound to the limit, exploded into motion. Her fist hurtled forward like an arrow. The air around it dropped away with a heavy whistle. Eh! Monokuma made a surprised sound, completely unprepared for the ferocity Ugami unleashed. Beneath the doll's painted surface lay machinery and wiring designed to resist damage, but the force of the blow shattered the soft exterior. The metal skeleton buckled, wiring sparked and tore. For a moment, the Monokuma twitched as circuits failed from the inside out. Knowing how dangerous the insides of those dolls could be, and unable to dislodge the anger that had boiled up in her, Ugami Sakura did not stop. She drove another blow into the damaged Monokuma. Sparks sprayed like fireflies. The doll's laugh stuttered into a mechanical screech. Each punch dented the casing further, ripped through insulation, and exposed jagged lengths of wiring and torn servos. The once jovial black and white face began to split, dark smoke curling from the seams. Around them, the others froze. Kirigiri with the handgun now steadied in her hands, Naigi clenched and pale, Yasuhiro trembling. Even the Monokumas at the back hesitated, uncertain what to do when their leader was being reduced to scrap by Ugami's relentless fury. When at last Ugami stepped back, breathing hard, the Monokuma that had taunted them sagged and groaned, its laughter gone, its inner lights flickering weakly. The corridor smelled of ozone and burnt plastic. For a charged, stunned moment, everything was silent. Then a new, dangerous tension settled over the group, as everyone wondered what Junko would do next. Section 108. She stepped forward. Her thigh, hard as a steel bar, swept out, and the few Monokuma in front of her instantly blew apart. Enoshima Junko reacted immediately, though. She took control of the remaining Monokuma and hurled them upward, aiming them at Ugami Sakura. From that reaction, Junko quickly guessed what had happened. Kirigiri Kyoko must have anticipated Junko's move and warned Ugami Sakura at noon. That warning had made Sakura's actions now feel like stepping on a mine. Kirigiri's foresight baffled Junko, but it didn't matter. As long as Sakura could be dealt with first, everything else would be easier. Junko had also noticed a change in Sakura's breathing before the fight. She'd probably investigated, especially since she planned to threaten Sakura. Sakura had always been strong, but never like this. strong enough that even Izuru Kamakura might not be able to withstand her blows directly. Her breathing during battle had shifted right after she went into the washroom with Kirigiri and said something. The change appeared as she came out. Junko suspected that this new way of breathing explained Sakura's leap in power. Whatever the cause, she could not let the current Ogami Sakura remain. Without hesitation, Junko ordered the nearest Monokuma to self-destruct. Bang, bang, bang. Explosions boomed in rapid succession. The Monokuma that flew upward were blasted back as if struck by a heavy force, their chest fur scattered to reveal tangled wires and sparking circuitry. Nagi Makoto and the others' ears rang from the noise. They stared at Kirigiri Kyoko with astonishment. Even Ugami Sakura turned back in surprise. Kirigiri stood a short distance away, holding her gun in a standard stance, eyes fixed on the scene ahead. A faint wisp of white smoke rose from the muzzle. Her shot had hit its mark. "Well done," Sakura said with a faint smile, then charged forward. More Monokuma were still running toward them. "All self-destruct," Junko called, realizing what had happened too late. Kirigiri had shattered the explosives on the first Monokuma, overturning Junko's plan. The game had shifted from mutual killing into a raw struggle of strength. Sakura could shatter Monokuma with a single punch. Kirigiri could still fire, but with so many moving targets and the Monokuma prepared for self-destruction, her shots couldn't reliably hit the explosives every time. Under Junko's command, the remaining 3 or 4 Monokuma began to power up. "Everyone, lie down! Now! They're going to explode!" Naegi shouted, feeling a prickling urgency all over his body. He dropped himself to the floor, and the others, seeing his action and trusting him, did the same. Boom! The corridor shuddered as the explosion rocked through it. Ugami Sakura planted herself in front of the group, inhaled deeply, drawing a huge lungful of air. Oxygen flooded her bloodstream and organs. Her muscles, usually rigid, flowed like water. Boom! She stepped forward and the floor trembled beneath her. Her eyes fixed on the roaring flames and shockwave barreling toward them. Then her fist, large and heavy as a soup bowl, cut through the air. The force of it created a powerful gust. Bang! Sakura's fist collided with the shockwave and flames. A chaotic airflow swept the corridor. The scorching blade-like gas made it hard to breathe. Determination flashed in Sakura's eyes. She swung her other fist, unleashing another burst of raw power. The flames and blasts split around her, driven tight against the walls. She couldn't block everything, but she reduced the impact enough to protect the people behind her. Chapter 79. Saiko Busujima's Astonishment. Kirigiri felt a surge of relief. If she hadn't taken out some of the Monokuma earlier, so many simultaneous detonations in such a narrow space might have overwhelmed even Sakura. She turned to Natsume Yuu. "Kyoko, Natsume, thanks for that," she said. Her shot hadn't been a random guess. Natsume's warning had told her to aim for the chest. She hadn't known why that spot mattered, but she trusted him and fired. Only when the Monokuma's fur burst did she realize the explosives had been hidden there. How did Natsume know there was a bomb there? Saiko Busujima asked, once everyone was safe. When the first Monokuma self-destructed, I saw where the explosion originated, Natsume Yuu replied. In the hall earlier, Junko had gotten a Monokuma to leap out and detonate to target Sakura. Because Sakura's punch had ripped some fur away, even for a moment, Natsume could see where the explosion came from. Seeing Kirigiri with a firearm, he called out the only helpful instruction he could think of. Isn't there that movie trope where a bullet hits something and it explodes? Yotsuya Miko wondered aloud, recalling scenes she'd seen on screen. It depends on the device, Natsume said. Movies exaggerate. Not every bomb will explode from a bullet. In our time, there are also explosives designed to need specific procedures to detonate for ease of transport. I see, Yotsuya said. Chitanda Eru tilted her head, curiosity bright in her eyes. Even though he wasn't at the scene, how did you know? Chitanda Eru burst out. I'm so curious. Natsume Yuya replied, calm and precise. Given that Enoshima Junko was manipulating Monokuma remotely, the explosive must have required activation from her side. If Monokuma had been a simple, unstable bomb, Junko couldn't have toyed with them the way she did. She had to be controlling it, like a substitute acting in front of everyone. Saiko Busujima raised an impressed eyebrow. To find the weak point so quickly, Natsume-kun is incredible. Watching Natsume speak so clearly, Saiko couldn't hide her admiration. In that instant before the blast, he not only located the explosive, but deduced its weakness as well. His observational skills were nothing to scoff at. Kato Megumi added, I didn't expect Kirigiri's marksmanship to be that accurate either. To shoot precisely at the location Natsume had pointed out, even if the shooter couldn't see the target directly, that wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Kirigiri Kyuko answered coolly, as a detective, it's important to practice self-defense. She spoke indifferently, but she wasn't exaggerating. Her grandfather had been a top detective, and she'd been trained by him since childhood, everything from investigative procedure to hand-to-hand fighting and weapons. Detection could make you a target. Without some means of defending yourself, you wouldn't last long. Doma Umaru, surprised, said, Is it like that detective who turned into a little elementary school kid? This particular skill, never shown in the anime version, made her think of a certain famous child detective. Yotsuya Miko grinned. Ah, Conan! Doma clapped. Oh, you have Conan too, Yotsuya. Yotsuya smiled. Yeah, but I only hear my little brother talk about it. It's been serialized forever. Doma sighed. Mine isn't finished either. It's a shame. Their conversation drifted until Butterfly Kanai looked at the calmer aftershocks of the explosion and said, If we can find Inoshima Junko after this, it'll be over, right? Kirigiri's expression tightened. Yes, but I'm not sure Ugami-san can break through the protections on the stairwells. Ugami Sakura was strong. She'd just unleashed tremendous power, but those stairwell protections had been made deliberately robust, intended to stop rioting students. Each stairwell on every floor had them. What was meant to delay troublemakers was now delaying them in getting to Junko. Natsume cut in, urgent. We need to hurry. Chitanda blinked. Why the rush? Natsume explained. I've already said Inoshima Junko is the ultimate analyst. She's excellent at deducing information from her surroundings. Ugami-san's breathing during the fight just now was noticeable. He continued, Even if it's not an ultimate talent, Junko's learning ability is very strong. Butterfly Kanai's eyes lit up. So she might learn water breathing too. It sounded ridiculous, but water breathing was as much a mental discipline as a physical one. Theoretically, someone with enough observational skill might pick up something of it. Kirigiri agreed with a terse nod. What Natsume says isn't impossible. Ugami's use of the breathing technique never reached total concentration. What she showed was obvious. Junko would have noticed. Natsume added, Even if she learns it, though, her body wouldn't match Ugami's. Junko's too weak physically. You can't compare pure observation to trained strength, speed, reaction, endurance. If those are smashed, it's not a fight, it's a one-sided crushing. They were still talking when a panicked cry cut through the air. Kirigiri spun and saw something horrible. Maizono Sayaka, covered in blood, crawling backward as the others scrambled away. In front of Sayaka, Ikusaba Mukuro knelt with a sharp object protruding from her abdomen. Blood poured from the wound and had already pooled on the floor. The glimmer of hope Mukuro had once represented was gone. She was dead. Under her lay Nagi Makoto, pinned and drenched in blood. He stared up at the body above him with wide, blank eyes, clearly not yet able to process what had happened. Kirigiri's gaze tracked the sharp implement in Mukuro's abdomen and then silently swept the scene. There was blast damage, yes, but no broken steel bars or obvious signs of a struggle. Only one conclusion fit. Butterfly Kanai cried, What happened? Chitanda murmured, Did Ikusaba-san protect that boy? Yotsuya asked, Wasn't she already unconscious? Natsume answered in the group calmly. It was the impact of Monokuma's self-destruction. He explained that the shockwave from Monokuma's explosion had blown Mukuro's body and moved it. Because she'd been unconscious, she couldn't brace herself against the blast. Instead, she was carried and landed directly on Nagi, accidentally shielding him from a flying, lethal fragment that would otherwise have struck him. Kirigiri, having already checked the scene, simply stated what she'd deduced. She was unconscious and couldn't stabilize herself. The blast pushed her onto Nagi. She happened to block that flying object for him. That object should be apart from Monokuma. Kato Megumi whispered, Is this the luck of the ultimate lucky student? Yotsuya's face turned complicated. If that person weren't one of the good guys, that would be terrifying. Maizono, recovering enough to act, shoved Mukuro's body off and scrambled to help Nagi up. Asahina Aoi and the others forced their fear down and joined to help as well. From the passage above, Enoshima Junko's voice rang out, angry and mocking. Cheating! Nobody died! This is ridiculous! Yasuhiro Hagakure looked up defiantly at a camera and barked his own fury back. Who cares about you? That explosion was meant to kill us all. She's a monster. Kirigiri turned her attention back to Ugami Sakura, who had just used her full strength and was now regulating her breathing. Ugami-san, we should try to open the stair protections and go straight to the surveillance room. Sakura blinked and made a questioning sound. Kirigiri leaned in and lowered her voice, urgency underlining every word. I'm worried Junko might learn that breathing technique. Even though Natsume had argued that Junko couldn't match Ugami in physical terms, Kirigiri refused to be careless. Facing someone like Enoshima Junko, every second of delay mattered. Chapter 110, Section 110. This made Enoshima Junko even harder to deal with. I understand, Ugami Sakura said softly when Kirigiri Kyoko voiced her concern. The two fell into step and continued forward. Damn it, must this young master always be a bystander? Togami Byakuya watched them march ahead and clenched his fists. Since dinner, the night's events had gone entirely beyond his expectations, which irked him deeply. He had to swallow his pride, though his memories were incomplete, and he couldn't risk acting rashly. Whatever Kirigiri had said about the outside world was probably true. Things were bad out there. That explained why, despite student riots beyond the academy, he had spent the day trapped inside with no response from the Togami Zaibatsu. Restraining his displeasure, he quickened his pace to follow. Haha, I'd like to see the woman who got us into this mess, genocider Sio crowed and kept pace with Togami. Celius Datia watched the small procession for a moment, then joined them. Hey, wait for us! Yasuhiro Hagakure called hurriedly after the group as they left. Yamada Hifumi panted, breathless in the oppressive heat that made his airways ache, but despite his complaints, he followed. Let's go, Maizono Sayaka said with a practiced, businesslike smile as she glanced at Naegi Makoto. Naegi wiped the blood from his face, looking down at Ikusaba Mukuro, who had shielded him from a deadly strike. Mukuro had not acted out of kindness, but she had saved him, an uncomfortable truth he couldn't ignore. It wasn't enough to make him side with Enoshima Junko, though. He fell in step with the others as they headed for the stairwell. Far away, Enoshima Junko seethed and plotted. That So is dead, and Monokuma's self-destruction didn't kill anyone, she muttered to herself, furious that events hadn't played out as she had hoped. If she were captured by the students, the consequences would be dire, but the idea only heightened her excitement. How could she turn this despair back onto them? She paced through plans and counterplans, hands clasped across her chest, biting perfectly manicured nails as her brow furrowed. Each scheme rose and fell in her mind. Against Ugami's brute strength and Kirigiri's intellect, she couldn't simply scatter the group. If she couldn't undermine those two, she couldn't flip the situation. Junko seems to have fallen into irreversible despair. A thrill ran through her at the thought. Then she trembled, lifted her face, sweat trickling down her skin, a manic smile blooming on her lips. Then I'll just have to try harder. Recalling the breathing technique Ugami Sakura had used earlier, Junko began to copy it. She did not aim to seize hope. Both sides were trying to survive, but only one side could win. The idea that one side might struggle and still be crushed delighted her, even if she ended up being the losing side. She savored the thought of despair and practiced with relish. Meanwhile, led by Kirigiri Kyoko, the group reached the stairwell quickly. Ugami-san, I'll leave this to you, Kirigiri said softly, studying the heavy steel gate blocking the stairs. Okay, Ugami replied, stepping forward to meet the obstruction. Those behind them watched expectantly. She drew in a great breath, filling her lungs with oxygen until her muscles flexed and her stance rooted into the ground. With a thunderous strike, she drove her fist into the gate. Steel bars, as thick as a fist, shuddered and rang, the sound of metal against metal echoing down the corridor. When Ugami withdrew her hand, greenish smoke drifted from it, and she stared at the dented bar. The damage was significant, but the gate was a lattice of interlocking bars. There was no way to clear a passage large enough to pass through without much more force. My current strength still isn't enough, she thought, as pain from the recoil throbbed up her arm. Damn it, someone swore, and Dahetian Wentu slammed his fist into the nearby wall with a dull thud. Though the others didn't show such violent reactions, disappointment clouded their faces. They had just learned their memories had been erased and burned to know what they'd experienced and what had happened to their families outside. As I thought, still not possible, Kirigiri murmured, frowning but not surprised. She hadn't wanted Ugami to push too hard here. If Ugami exhausted herself trying to force this gate, they would lose their strongest fighter. Worse, there were other gates like this further up the building. It wasn't worth risking everything on one barricade. Natsume Yuu, who had been watching the damaged corridor, spoke up suddenly. I have a way for this floor, but for the next one, we'll have to wait for Kanai to prepare. Kirigiri's purple eyes sharpened. What way? The spot where the explosion happened earlier, Natsume said. Kirigiri's face lit with understanding. The earlier blast had already weakened the passage beyond the steel bars. Some of the bars inside had been exposed and deformed. Construction materials could only withstand so much. With Ugami's strength, they could break through there. They had been so focused on the main gate that they'd missed the alternate route. Thank you, Kirigiri said, then turned to Ugami. This way is blocked. We'll climb up from another place. Are there any other ways? Togami asked, frowning. He had studied the sealed classroom building previously and assumed most exits had been secured. The others looked to Kirigiri with growing curiosity and a new measure of respect for the calm, sharp young woman who led them. Chapter 111, Section 111. Even though her memories had been erased, she still knew so much. From beginning to end, Kirigiri Kyuko kept a cold, unreadable expression that left everyone guessing what she was thinking. Although we can only go up one floor for now, we still have to thank Enoshima Junko, she said. Perhaps because she knew how to get under Enoshima Junko's skin, Kirigiri rarely smiled. Oh? Togami Byakuya pushed his glasses up and made a small sound of puzzlement. Kirigiri didn't elaborate. After a short walk, they returned to the site of the explosion. The blast had left the passage webbed with cracks. The reinforcing bars were visible in the shattered concrete, giving the impression the ceiling could collapse with a single shove. We're here. Ugami, are you confident this time? Kirigiri stopped, stared at the damaged ceiling, then turned to Ugami Sakura. If that's what you mean, I won't let you down. Seeing the destruction, Ugami Sakura straightened and looked up solemnly. Kirigiri Kyoko is incredible, thinking of this. Fujisaki Chihiro clasped his hands and gazed at Kirigiri with admiration. He had always idolized anyone who radiated that kind of quiet competence. It wasn't me who thought of it, Kirigiri said quietly, refusing the praise. Fujisaki's face registered confusion. There were only the people here. Everyone had been silent. If it wasn't Kirigiri who had the idea, who had? Kirigiri didn't answer his question, though. I wonder how furious Enoshima Junko will be when she sees this. Asahina Aoi beamed with triumph. The others couldn't help smiling too. Anything that upset the person who had trapped them and forced them to turn on each other felt like a small victory. All right, first go carry 1 or 2 tables over for Ugami, Kirigiri said once the cheering had died down. There was still some distance to the ceiling. Even if Ugami could jump up and break through, they'd need tables and chairs to climb on. Leave this to us, came calls from the group. Let Ugami and Kirigiri stay here for now. Encouraged by their enthusiasm, Kirigiri and Ugami didn't refuse. Seeing everyone so energetic, I feel relieved, Ugami said, watching Yasuhiro Hagakure and the others hurry toward the hall, joking and laughing. If it weren't for you, Kirigiri, things would have turned out much worse this time, Ugami added in a low voice. Even without having read the original story, she could tell the difference Kirigiri's insight had made. Without Kirigiri's warnings and revelations, their classmates, carefree now, would have eventually lost their reason and descended into murder. This time was indeed luck. Kirigiri paused, thoughtful. Emotion and a sense of fortune crossed her typically impassive face. In the original timeline, 16 of them started this game and only 6 survived. 10 died in mutually assured bloodshed. If Ugami hadn't left clues at the end to force Junko to open the remaining floors and begin the search for the mastermind, even fewer might have escaped. Luck? You discovered something even this young master couldn't, Togami said sternly from where he had stayed behind. Accept the praise properly. He then turned his attention to another worry. Have you any sense of what's happening outside? Seeing that only they were present, he pressed the question. Kirigiri glanced at the damaged camera overhead and bit back a grimace. Her face grew more serious. Natsume Yuya and Doma Umaru hadn't given details about the outside world. Both were focused on dealing with Enoshima Junko, but between their few words and her own deductions, Kirigiri had some idea. It probably isn't much better out there, she said. Togami's expression clouded. Ugami's face tightened too. If she had the strength to, she would have smashed every barrier in sight. Don't say things like that out loud, Kirigiri warned Togami, lifting her eyes. It'll unsettle people, and Enoshima Junko will use that to provoke them. Togami clicked his tongue in irritation, but didn't argue. The Togami conglomerate might also be in crisis in the unknown world beyond. His position matched Kirigiri's pragmatism. Natsume Yuya added a practical suggestion. I think it's best to share rooms at night and always have 2 people on watch. Wait until Kane has the bombs ready tomorrow, he continued. Since Junko's rules had already been broken, strict rooming arrangements no longer mattered. Keeping people isolated would only make it easier for Junko to pick them off. Kirigiri nodded in thanks for the reminder. Saiko Busujima spoke next. An enemy with that level of intelligence is terrifying. Even without appearing in person, Junko made everyone wary. Saiko felt lucky their side would only have to deal with zombies later, or at worst, other villains. Yotsuya Miko agreed. I feel the same way. Doma Umaru muttered, a foe hiding in the dark like that makes sleeping almost impossible. Chitanda Eru said, I can see why Kirigiri wanted to settle things with her here. Butterfly Kanae wondered aloud, if it were Yuya, how would he deal with her? Kato Megumi echoed the curiosity. Kirigiri, too, was interested. Could you tell us? It might help me prepare. Natsume Yuya smiled and gave a simple answer that made everyone else lean in. For me, it's simple. What would you do? Someone asked. Knock out and tie up the other classmates, then break through every obstacle and walk up to her, Natsume replied with an easy shrug. He spoke as if it were nothing. In this world, he couldn't become some inhuman prodigy, he added quietly, but if he'd been born where Kirigiri came from, things might have been different. Although there were no supernatural powers on their side, the limits of the human body there were far beyond anything these kids could compare to. That's really straightforward. Seiko's reply made Saiko Busujima pause a moment, then smile. Force wasn't everything, she thought, but when facing an enemy like that, it was the most useful thing. That really suits your talent. I thought you would try to outsmart her, but he just suppressed her with force. If he's trying to protect everyone, he doesn't have the time for schemes. Simple actions, pure goals, probably Enoshima Junko's most helpless kind of enemy. Not knowing where you were, not caring who you were, only wanting to eliminate you. Facing an enemy like that, anyone would be unnerved. That's something I can't learn. Her eye twitched, and Kirigiri had to admit defeat. Still, she resolved she would practice that breathing technique diligently from now on. If such blunt force was what it took, she wanted to be able to stand before an enemy like that and cut through every obstacle. As a detective, she could find evidence and reveal culprits. But some adversaries, as Natsume Yuu had shown, had to be met head-on. While everyone talked, Makoto Negi and the others dragged a table over. Ugami Sakura vaulted onto it and landed steady, then began swinging at the damaged ceiling. The explosion had blown a hole through the concrete. She didn't waste time clearing the whole mess, but after a bit of struggling, she bent the steel bars back enough to create a passable opening. Sakura was the first to climb up, her sharp eyes sweeping the area until she was satisfied it was safe. She leaned over and called down, squatting to pull people up. Come up, everyone. All right, the boys go up first, Asahina Aoi warned, glancing at the girls. They were wearing skirts, and sitting on a higher level could cause embarrassing exposure. Kirigiri met the few boys' eyes. They understood without being told and didn't protest. With Sakura's help, they were all on the second floor in short order. Selus Diatia looked at the ceiling and hesitated. Want to give it a try? My body needs adjusting. Ugami Sakura shook her head. She'd pushed herself hard using water breathing and had taken the blast's backlash. The technique, still imperfect for her, had taken a toll. She didn't explain this aloud. No one needed the detail. Celius lowered her head and spoke lightly. The tone hinted at neither disappointment nor worry. After that, more than a dozen of them filtered through the second floor, checking for anything useful. Unlike the sparse first floor, the second had a pool, a library, changing rooms, and other facilities. When someone mentioned the changing room, though, a rumor stopped them. There was a Gatling gun in there. Nobody argued. They'd already grown accustomed to strange appearances and, more importantly, to Sakura's combat ability and Kirigiri's quiet authority. After a quick sweep, they returned to the first floor for food to get through the night. On Natsume Yuu's suggestion, Kirigiri gathered everyone in the library on the second floor to rest and left guards posted. If Enoshima Junko showed up, they had to be roused immediately, and they were to ignore her words completely. That stern instruction made everyone clear-eyed. Junko might look defeated, but she was still extremely dangerous. "Let's cut the live feed for now," Kirigiri told Butterfly Kanai. "Miss Butterfly, can you take care of the bomb issue?" After everything that had happened, even Kirigiri felt drained. "No need," Butterfly Kanai said softly, "as long as you can get away." Her long black hair framed a gentle smile. Even if they weren't from her world, she couldn't bear to see those young faces die. "Thank you," Kirigiri said, purple eyes flickering. When the live stream went dark, Natsume picked up his phone. It was past 6 in the morning. School started at 8. He had an hour or two still. "I'm so sleepy, but I can't fall asleep. Tomorrow's classes are ruined." Natsume opened the chat and saw Miko's frantic messages. Her body was exhausted, but everything that had happened had her too keyed up to calm down. She couldn't sleep. I know. Same when I first joined." The message made Natsume recall the first time he stayed up all night for Butterfly Kanei's stream. "Luckily, I didn't have school then." Chitanda sounded relieved, though later she'd wake up late and her family would worry. "Katagumi, I slept through a few classes too." "Tell me about it. What happened back then?" Doma obliged, deciding chatting was better than lying awake. Natsume watched the exchange for a while, then asked, "So none of you are going to rest?" "We'll be fine. Busujima and Yotsuya might struggle." People who had already trained in basic breathing techniques could afford one sleepless night. "Yotsu, I can't sleep at all. If I nap now, I'll never wake up for class." "Kato, I can rest in the infirmary later." Yotsuya resigned herself to being scolded later. The price of something that felt like a miracle was small. Saiko Busujima, though, wasn't done. "Can you tell me about this breathing technique? I want to learn." Seiko had always been interested in anything that made her stronger. With the world changing and dangers, zombies, darker human hearts, survival would be harder. After seeing what Kirigiri's side had gone through, she was clear about how dangerous people could be. Her plan for now was to set up a base with just 2 or 3 people, all women. It was a harsh calculus, but she believed smaller groups were safer. The night stretched on with the chat, the quiet library, and the steady watch on the stairs. They were a ragged group, but they had a plan: rest when they could, ignore the temptations of Junko's words, and be ready to move at the first sign of her. Section 113. Otherwise, things might get complicated if men got mixed in. Kato Megumi typed. "It lets your body fully absorb nutrients and improves your fitness," added Doma Umaru. "Increased vitality can even make your skin better." Doma Umaru continued. "You won't have to worry about staying up late anymore." "Can damaged areas be repaired?" Kirigiri Kyuko, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. She hadn't been able to rest well in a place like this. How could she? She'd found everyone in the group chat and initially just watched. It wasn't until Doma Umaru's message that she'd joined in. "Yes, but it'll take time," Natsume Yuu replied. "Is that so?" Kirigiri murmured. Leaning against the wall, she flexed her hand and felt the leather rubbing against her glove. A strange feeling tightened in her chest. She didn't wear gloves to look cool. She wore them to hide a burn scar she'd gotten when she first became a detective. It wasn't pretty, but it was proof of what she had gone through and a reminder never to be careless. It meant something to her. Even though it could be fixed at a hospital, she chose not to. A vanished scar would be like a brand new path, she thought. With her fingers interlaced and resting on her abdomen, Kirigiri watched the chat drift into casual conversation. Yotsuya Miko, who had complained she couldn't sleep, dropped out of the chat shortly after. Fatigue finally won. Natsume Yuu and the others kept talking until dawn. When the sun rose, the air seemed to brighten, and the group gradually dispersed to wash up and get ready for school. After breakfast with Natsume Reiko, they drove to the familiar intersection. Two girls in the same uniform were already waiting there. The short black-haired girl clutched her bag in front of her, quiet. The brown ponytail girl leaned against the wall with her bag over her shoulder, the tip of her shoe tapping the ground. When Reiko's car pulled up and Natsume Yuu stepped out of the passenger seat, both girls lit up in their own ways. "Good morning, Auntie Natsume," Shiramine Risa and her friend called as they approached the car. "Risa, Kade, good morning." Natsume Reiko smiled, all poised charm. "I'm off to work now. Take your time walking." Then she turned to Natsume Yuu with a fond look. "Drive carefully." Yuu nodded and shut the car door. Those same words were said every day, but they were comforting. "You absolutely will never guess what skill Kade finally picked," Risa called after the car, eyes bright. Natsume Yuu walked ahead with a slight smile. Since the world had become a mixed one, he couldn't be sure Kade would choose the same skill as before. Even the game developers probably didn't expect you could play it like that. Risa, keeping pace beside him, beamed. After all, it was her friend who'd done something so unexpected. Kade's sudden rise made Risa proud and a little pressured. "It is Kade, after all," Risa said. "Since going into the game, she's been more and more unpredictable." "Come to think of it, Kade, this is your first time being in the game for so long, right?" Risa asked, glancing at Hanju Kade. "It is," Kade confirmed, recalling the span from getting the device until now. "Then you've got to be careful. If you don't switch your mindset back, it can be a real problem." Risa exchanged a look with Yuu and warned Kade. Even though it had been only 7 days, the constant tension in the game could form habits. Why? Kade blinked, genuinely puzzled. "Think about it. You're always on guard in the game, constantly raising your shield and reacting to any movement," Risa explained. "If you can't switch off that mode in real life, you'll end up making strange movements." "Ha! I'm not that dumb. I can tell the difference between a game and reality." Kade laughed, waving her hand. "Kade, attack ahead!" Someone from nowhere, playful, half-serious, shouted, and before she fully registered it, Natsume Yuu barked in a deadpan, "Charge! Cover!" Almost on instinct, Kade swung her bag up and shouted along. Then she snapped back to reality. The two people beside her stared in silence. Other students nearby glanced over, drawn by the sudden motion. Kade flushed, put her bag down, and fell into step with them wordlessly. Yuu and Risa didn't make a fuss. "I'll remember," Kade said meekly. They all smiled at each other, and students in the same uniforms began to gather around. The three friends reached the school gate as the black luxury sedan pulled away. A tall, long flaxen-haired girl approached the grounds with a measured, graceful stride. She held her bag before her and wore a gentle smile that made her seem like an untouchable moon. "Yuki's still radiant as ever," someone whispered. "Who could possibly be her boyfriend? I heard loads of people sent her love letters, and she turned them all down. Even seniors confessed, but she refused them. She's like a flower on a high peak. Good. No one will steal her heart." The whispers were full of envy and admiration, and the boys nearby sighed inwardly. Then, to their shock, the radiant girl stopped, smiled beautifully, and her smile was aimed directly at a boy, Natsume Yuu, who had just arrived with his friends. The sight felt like glass shattering in the boys' chests. Seeing the girl they all admired smile at someone else hit them harder than anything else. Section 114. Standing beside that boy were two beautiful girls who were every bit as striking as Yuki Asuna. A few boys nearby could tell instantly that the smile on Asuna's face wasn't the polite, aloof kind she gave everyone. It was a smile of genuine joy. "Damn it. Who is that guy anyway?" "Natsume Yuu from Class 1. That name sounds familiar. He's the top student in our grade. Smart, handsome, and surrounded by gorgeous girls. Is this the protagonist of some dating sim? I think I've heard that before." Ignoring the whispers, Natsume Yu and Shiramine Risa smiled and nodded back at Yuki Asuna. After fighting side by side the previous night and having their secret revealed, the three of them had grown closer. Natsume, Shiramine, good morning, Asuna said as the group drew near. Morning, Yuki, Natsume replied without hesitation. Asuna's still causing a stir. Risa laughed cheerfully. Asuna gave a wry smile and shook her head. She didn't enjoy being the center of attention. There were girls from wealthier families at school, but no one seemed to turn heads like she did. She didn't want to sully the mood, though, and her gaze dropped to Hanju Keide, who had been watching curiously nearby. This is Hanju Keide. We grew up together, Natsume introduced. Hello, Hanjo, Asuna greeted with a gentle smile. Keide, who had already learned from Risa that the three of them had cleared dungeons together, wasn't a stranger to Asuna. Lowering her voice, Asuna added, Natsume, please don't tell anyone about me playing games. She had waited for them to approach for this very reason. Natsume spread his hands and half joked, Don't worry, I understand. The others nodded in agreement, and Asuna relaxed into a smile. To avoid having them overthink things, she explained softly, My family is strict, so they don't know I play. Her cheeks colored slightly as she said it, the thrill of hiding something that felt like her own little rebellion. If people at school found out, lots of them would want to play together, and that would be trouble. It must be hard to be a young lady like that, Katie said sympathetically. As much as I appreciate what my family provides, sometimes I just want a space that's mine, Asuna murmured. They were at the shoe-changing area by then, and Asuna decided it was time to go. I'll head off now. I'm going too. Natsume patted Risa on the head, exchanged a nod with her, then went to the Class A shoe cabinet and started upstairs. At the top of the stairs, he caught a glimpse of Asuna being surrounded by admiring girls, handling them with an elegant, polite smile. He shook his head and kept walking. The moment he stepped into the classroom, the noise died down. Dozens of curious, excited eyes turned to him. Some students glanced down at their phones, looked back at him as if comparing. As he walked down the aisle, Natsume noticed one screen showing a video from the second event in New World Online, a character in a black coat wielding a long sword. So that's why I've been recognized, he thought, and went to his seat. The event had run for 7 days, and they'd been in the same class for nearly a month. Recognition wasn't that surprising. Still, it was odd. A classmate who looked frail and wasn't very healthy, turning out to be a top player in the game. You go, someone muttered. Why should I? If we ask, let's all go together. It wouldn't hurt to ask. What if he says it's not him? But he looks just like the character. Maybe someone copied him and tweaked it. I always thought having that face would make it easier to attract girls. But even if the appearance is the same, how do you explain the name? Both have Yu. Would someone really use their own name as their game name? Quiet conversations floated from the back of the room. Finally, a girl stepped forward, a mix of nervousness and excitement on her face. Natsume, excuse me, is this you? She held up her phone. The familiar event video played on the screen. Natsume looked at the trembling girl, then at the dozens of expectant faces around him. He nodded once. It's me. The girl's face lit up like a light bulb. Even though she'd suspected it, hearing confirmation firsthand made her giddy. New World Online was one of the most popular games around. Being in the same class as someone famous in it was a social coup. So cool. I can't believe that person's in our school. Same class too. Do you think the fortress who always plays with him might be from our school as well? Maybe. The one who killed me was right in front of me the whole time. It feels weird. He looks so frail, but he's so powerful in the game. Chapter 115, Section 115. The quiet classroom erupted like a frying pan heating up. Conversations sparked everywhere, even among students who didn't play games. As they compared notes, the pieces fell into place. There was someone formidable in their class. Anything else? Natsume Yuu asked calmly, looking at the excited girl in front of him. Ah, no, thank you. The girl's enthusiasm deflated under his cool tone. Realizing they weren't close, she hurried away after a quick thanks. His composed manner reminded everyone he hadn't really spoken to anyone since the start of the term. It wasn't that they were deliberately excluding him because of his condition. It was more that he simply didn't care what others thought or about the classroom atmosphere. The chatter died down, though curious glances still flicked toward Natsume Yuu. He propped his cheek with his hand and turned to stare out the window where a few students were sprinting toward the school gate. He opened Chat Group 08. Yotsuya Miko. Staying up all night is so scary. Lying on her desk, Yotsuya Miko sounded as if she might doze off any second. She'd fallen asleep without noticing the hour and only slept for an hour before her younger brother started banging on her door, waking her up with difficulty. A heavy wave of drowsiness washed over her, making it hard to open her eyes. She'd wanted to skip school, but being a good student, she forced herself to get up. Her mother, worried she wasn't feeling well, accepted Miko's excuse that she hadn't rested properly. Domumaru, you didn't ask for leave? Domumaru was surprised that Miko, who didn't seem to care about maintaining a perfect image, hadn't tried to take the day off. If anything, she was as diligent as Chitanda Eru. When I go to school today, will I still be able to see those spirits? Even after staying up all night, Chitanda sat bolt upright, alert and earnest. Her long, black, fluffy hair framed her face, and her purple eyes fixed on the chat with intense seriousness. Miko's mood brightened at Chitanda's question. She had nearly forgotten what she'd seen the night before until that morning when she woke to find her deceased father sitting at the dining table. She almost called out, "Father," before reality snapped back. Fortunately, she stopped herself in time. On her way to school, she had seen many strangely shaped spirits along the roadside. Most fled as soon as they noticed her, though some lingered at a distance, looking at her with a mix of greed and fear. Even at school, she'd noticed an ugly, old man-shaped spirit scrambling away from a friend's desk. Her presence had drawn a lot of attention from spirits, but it had also spared her some trouble. Compared to more terrifying entities, these occasional apparitions were only a nuisance. Yotsuya Miko. Thanks to Natsume's amulet fragment, I feel so much calmer. She touched the fragment in her pocket. Its warmth seeped into her palm and steadied her. Looks like you had a busy morning. Megumi's amused tone suggested she had an idea of what Miko had encountered. Actually, I found something else and wanted to ask Natsume. Miko hesitated, thinking of the father she'd seen that morning. She didn't want to sound like she was fishing for sympathy, but if she kept quiet, she might never learn whether it was really him. What's up? I saw my dead father's spirit today. She finally said it. Since Natsume Yuu had sent the fragment, she assumed he already knew about her situation. The others fell quiet at the weight of her words. Natsume, do you think I should tell him I can see him? She didn't know whether to speak to the spirit or to pretend she couldn't see him. It sounds like in your world there's no forced reincarnation, or maybe no reincarnation at all, which is why so many spirits linger here. He couldn't think of any other reason for so many spirits to be present in the living world. So your father might be able to stay here for a long time. For now, act normally and don't reveal that you can see him. Reevaluate after your spiritual strength improves. He explained his reasoning. Getting close to spirits risks being tainted by their aura and can attract unnecessary trouble. Once her abilities were stronger, she could handle whatever complications arose. Besides, her father was at home. Whether she admitted she saw him or not wouldn't change his presence. That's just my suggestion. You don't have to follow it. He added the caveat. Everyone in the group was an independent person, not a character in some story, so he would only offer advice rather than order people around. Yotsuya Miko. I understand, thank you. She thought it through and decided his advice made the most sense. There's something I don't understand. With the main topic settled, Chitanda couldn't help but voice her curiosity. About Yotsuya's father? Yotsuya, I'm sorry, but why can your father still stay at home? Chitanda's questions came in a rush. Her sharp mind had caught something odd. Yotsuya had an amulet fragment, and earlier comments suggested it was working. If the fragment was active, why could the spirit remain in the house? I'm very curious why. Her purple eyes shone with an eager thirst for answers. The teacher on the podium felt the pressure of Chitanda's intensity. Thinking with a flush of embarrassment, she reflected that if her students could be that focused, she, as a teacher, had no excuse to fall behind. Chapter 116, Section 116. She began attending classes with even more seriousness and passion. Yotsuya Miko frowned in curiosity. "I'm a little curious, too." It was a blunt question, but Miko wasn't the only one wondering why her father could ignore the fragment's energy and remain at home. Natsume Yuu answered, calm and measured. "He's probably a bound spirit, and he doesn't have any ill will. The deterrent is aimed at malicious intent." "The so-called deterrent only affects those with bad intentions," he added. "If there's nothing evil in someone's heart, there's nothing for that energy to take hold of." That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Beside Miko's father was a powerful spiritual presence protecting him, which explained why he seemed unaffected. The full explanation would have been long and complicated, and some aspects weren't even known to Miko herself. There was no need to go into it. "I see. That makes sense," Chitanda Eru said, satisfied. She only wanted a plausible explanation, and Natsume's answer fit. Kato Megumi turned to another topic. "Did Saiko Busujima go to school today?" Saiko Busujima replied, "I'll go in the afternoon. Right now I need to start preparing protection and supplies." She couldn't predict when the virus might start spreading, so she decided to prepare thoroughly. She hadn't slept well the night before, and could have taken the day off, but she preferred to get things ready. "Do Natsume and Doma have any recommendations?" she asked. "You two seem more experienced with this." Thinking of what Doma Umaru had said the previous night and the insights Natsume had shown, Saiko asked for practical advice. She'd watched zombie movies before, but mostly for the action. She hadn't studied survival techniques in depth. Better to ask people who actually knew. "Generally, the most important things are generators and water purification," Natsume said. "But since you have this group chat, water shouldn't be as big a problem," he added. "That's right," Doma Umaru chimed in. "For water and daily necessities, we can help." Water is crucial after an apocalypse, and compared to other worlds, they had decent resources to support Saiko's needs. "The most important thing is external protection, or building a basement," Doma continued. He knew Saiko's family ran a dojo. Their house couldn't be tiny, so a proper shelter was feasible. Saiko shook her head. "No, I can't always trouble you." She appreciated the offers, but didn't want to rely on them constantly. Natsume, understanding her practical concerns, moved on. Doma filled in items she might have missed. With their guidance, Saiko went from place to place buying supplies. Money flowed out quickly, but the home warehouse slowly filled. To avoid having everything in one spot, she stashed enough supplies in each room to last a week. For the cellar and outer wall protection, she reserved an appointment with 907 first and waited for someone to survey the site. It felt like preparing for a survival game, thought Doma, which explained his enthusiastic advice. Kato Megumi and the others chimed in from time to time, reminding her of things to check. Soon it was lunchtime. "Phew, finally, everything's ready." Saiko breathed out, wiping sweat from her forehead. She'd been busy all morning. Even with strong stamina, she was drenched. She took off her sun jacket, and the figure beneath it revealed itself. Long, straight legs emphasized by jeans, a sweat-darkened white top clinging to her form, and usually loose dark purple hair tied up in a high ponytail to cool off. The pristine nape of her neck glistened with sweat. Her cheeks were flushed. Alone in the room, she was an arresting presence, an older sister sort of beauty that would draw attention if anyone were there to see it. "Thank you all so much," she told the group. To show them the result of her work, she zoomed the camera out, took a picture of the fully stocked warehouse, and uploaded it to the group chat. She included herself in the shot. Yotsuya Miko reacted. "Saiko Busujima is amazing," Chitanda Eru exclaimed. Kato Megumi was speechless. Doma Umaru blurted, "That figure, she's only 1 or 2 years older than us?" Compared to the stocked warehouse, Saiko herself drew even more stunned reactions. A few of the girls were visibly taken aback by her presence in the photo. Chitanda's face went bright red. "Wait, Saiko, there are boys in the group. You should delete it quickly," Miko urged. Natsume, the only male who had seen the picture, was looking at Saiko with clear, steady eyes. Years of illness had tempered him. He could appreciate beauty without any ill intent. Saiko seemed to understand that. "If it's just you who sees it, I don't mind," she said openly. She wasn't frivolous. She simply respected Natsume. Facing a man who was good-looking, capable, and decent, she felt no shame in allowing him a glimpse. The others burst into conjecture. "Does Saiko like Natsume?" Yotsuya cried. No, no, that's too fast. You haven't even gotten to know each other," Chitanda protested. "How amazing," Kato sighed dreamily. Saiko narrowed her eyes, a long, fox-like look, and made an inexplicable little sound, part amusement, part self-satisfaction. It was exactly the reaction she had expected. Exceptional people attracted attention, whether from the same sex or the opposite. It's Chapter 1 Teen. It's not that I like him yet. It's just that Natsume gives me a really good feeling. If we were in the same world, I could get to know him better. Whether as a swordsman or as a woman, if you know your heart and go after it, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Also, I don't think what I looked like just now was too revealing, right?" The girl on the infirmary bed smiled faintly, a little flushed, her eyes sparkling with gossip. Yotsuya Miko had never expected the upperclassman who joined the chat, Saiko Busujima, to be so blunt. She couldn't help thinking how easily Natsume seemed to attract attention from girls. A shadow fell across the doorway as a cheerful voice called out, "Miko, I brought food. You'll be fine once you eat." Hanari Yurikawa appeared, a pile of snacks tumbling out behind her. "Hanari, why are you here?" Yotsuya exclaimed, surprised. "You were dozing in class, 1 or 2 periods, right? It's break time now. I figured you must be starving." Hanari ripped open a loaf of bread and, without ceremony, tried to press it toward Miko. "When I'm out of sorts, I always feel better after eating. I'm okay. I just didn't sleep well last night." Yotsuya hurriedly pushed Hanari's hand away. She had nodded off during the second period and had come to the infirmary to rest. After an hour or 2 of sleep, she felt a little more energetic. "You do look better," Hanari said, inspecting her closely. "Eat your lunch properly." The bread was still in front of Yotsuya. She couldn't refuse. Her stomach was rumbling. Sitting up on the edge of the bed, she took slow, careful bites. Hanari sat next to her, tearing into snacks with a much bigger appetite, eating in a loud, unabashed way. Yotsuya glanced at the chat log on her phone again. Saiko. Clearly understanding one's heart and going all out to obtain it is nothing to be shy about. It's true that it's not overly revealing. It's not strange for Natsume to attract women's attention, is it? Besides, the chat group didn't forbid it. It's not like you can't fall in love across worlds. If we could travel between worlds in the future, it would be much like any normal relationship. In fact, since we share this secret, we might even be closer than ordinary couples. Chitanda hesitated at that, unsure how to answer. Saiko's photo had been impressive. Her figure and the way she was sweating might make anyone blush, even another woman. Doma Umaru's message arrived next. "As someone who's been watching, what do you think?" It was indeed stunning. It was a frank admission, and Yotsuya felt the truth in it. Saiko's presence in the group was unique, mature, composed, and impossible to ignore. That wasn't to put the others down. Chitanda, Shiramine Risa, and the rest were the luminous youth of the group, overflowing with the beauty of adolescence. Saiko was the mature older sister type. Butterfly Kanae fell somewhere in between, with the innocence of youth and the warmth of a gentle sister. Saiko Busujima. Thank you for the compliment. Yotsuya smiled faintly at the banter and took another bite. After finishing, she put her phone away. Hanari stayed, content to share the snacks and chatter. Outside the classroom windows, the day continued. More students leaving, small clusters of conversation drifting across the schoolyard. Natsume, carrying his bento, descended the stairs at his own pace. A few classmates glanced his way, but they had already grown used to him after the morning's events. He didn't mind the attention. Near the bottom of the stairs, a familiar voice spoke. Natsume-kun, we meet again here. Yuki Asuna stood in the hallway, a lunchbox wrapped in a pink ribbon cradled in her hands. She'd been startled at first, then composed herself and smiled. This was where they'd first met, the place where they now met most often. Yuki, aren't you eating with your classmates? Natsume asked, nodding toward the others nearby. I said I had plans with a friend, Asuna replied, lowering her eyes to the lunchbox and smiling faintly. Would you like to eat together? Natsume glanced at the two people in the courtyard and then offered, Is that okay? Asuna blinked, surprised but not refusing. If you don't mind Risa and the others being there. Of course not, he said with a shrug. Asuna didn't mind. She knew the three, Risa, Honju Kaide, and the rest, shared their secret, so she felt no awkwardness in joining them. Natsume led her downstairs. Yuki? Shiramine Risa called out in surprise when she saw Asuna following Natsume. We met on the way, and I invited her to join us. Sorry for the sudden interruption, Natsume added. It's fine, Asuna bowed slightly and said politely. Really, it's fine. Risa waved it off. Since Natsume had invited her, she wouldn't refuse. It's livelier with more people, Honju Kaide chimed in with a warm, sweet smile. Asuna, having been raised to attend many social gatherings as the daughter of a large company, watched them closely and felt reassured by their genuine reactions. They didn't seem put off by her presence. We have a great spot, no sun at all, and the breeze is so comfortable, Kate added enthusiastically, as if showing someone a secret hideout. Natsume, Kade in class this morning. Risa started, about to spill something. Kade abruptly covered Risa's mouth with both hands. Her face flushed bright red, her black eyes locked on her friend, and the cowlick on her short hair quivered. You can't say that! She hissed, barely able to keep the secret. At that moment, she seemed to radiate an almost palpable aura. Whatever had happened earlier, whatever embarrassing thing, absolutely could not be allowed to be known by anyone else. Natsume, this? Yuki Asuna said nervously, glancing between the two girls and then reflexively at Natsume Yuu. You can't tell anyone, okay? It's fine. They're just messing around, Asuna added, trying to sound casual. Natsume Yuu only shook his head slowly and offered a faint smile. Honju Kaide made a small, protesting noise, and Shiramine Risa could only nod, a little sound of relief caught in her throat. You have to promise. Kaide didn't immediately let go, still clutching Risa's hand. No way. Risa, suddenly mischievous, flashed a grin. You were lying all along. Before Katie could cover her mouth, she lunged forward to stop her friend. Not this time. Risa slipped aside with a cheeky laugh and bolted back toward where they'd been sitting. Don't run! Kaide chased after her, fangs flashing between her lips as she called. The two of them were soon racing off, shrieking and laughing, leaving a trail of playful chaos. Yuki Asuna watched them in silence. A flicker of envy crossed her face. As the young lady of a major corporation, she'd been raised to keep proper etiquette and composure. She had never had someone she could be so silly with in public. She accepted that sacrifice for the convenience her family gave her, but she was still, at heart, a girl who wanted to play. Natsume Yuu noticed the look and didn't comment. He simply followed the pair. With one more person tagging along, the group still had plenty to talk about, shared jokes and the easy camaraderie of friends. Lunch passed quickly. Everyone returned to their classrooms and the afternoon lessons continued. Natsume Yuu stayed active in the group chat as the day wore on. Kiriko, good morning, everyone. After several hours away, Kirigiri finally logged back in. Good morning, I guess. She glanced at the sun outside her window, lower in the sky than expected, and felt oddly disoriented. Maybe it was because they'd all shared similar times before, and now a world with a different flow of time felt strange. It's already afternoon here. Same here. Different worlds can have different time flows. It's not that strange. Even on Earth, time differs between countries. True. Did Enoshima Junko do anything last night? The question made everyone sit up. They all hated the idea of what Junko might have done. She was, after all, the most vicious enemy they'd faced. Thankfully, Natsume reminded me, otherwise things could have been worse. Kirigiri's eyes flickered as she thought back to the night. As Natsume had warned, Junko hadn't given up easily. Even when everyone was gathered, she continued her provocations, offering bribes and threats, a 10 billion yen bait, among other things. The cameras had been destroyed, but the building was small. Sounds from other floors reached them. Having read the original work, Kirigiri knew exactly who Junko's methods were aimed at. There were temptations and threats that hadn't even appeared in the source material, things tailored to each person's weaknesses. Kirigiri realized Junko had investigated them and prepared accordingly. Because of what Natsume had said, Kirigiri had ordered Ugami Sakura to knock everyone out. With memories wiped, the bonds of the past 2 years had been erased. Any camaraderie they'd built was gone. For safety, Kirigiri resorted to force. She wasn't someone who could cultivate trust the way Nagi Makoto, the ultimate hope, might. She was a detective. So those who complied were confined, and those who resisted were knocked out and then confined. That included genocider Seo. After being knocked out, she reverted to Fukawa Tuko. Chitanda Eru. No wonder Yu is so wary of her. Chitanda couldn't help but sigh at Junko's terror. Even without appearing, Junko sowed discord among allies with words and schemes. Doma Umaru, you can't make many bonds in one night. Kirigiri had no choice. Doma Umaru understood Kirigiri's decision. It might alienate potential allies, but it was necessary for safety, especially with someone deliberately exploiting personal weaknesses. A few more people continued the discussion, really helping Kirigiri piece together deductions about what had happened. Time slipped by quietly. When Natsume Yuu returned home after school, Butterfly Kane, absent most of the day, finally appeared in the chat. Butterfly Kane, sorry I'm late. The explosives Kirigiri needed are ready. Thank you. Kirigiri, now awake and back at the controls, immediately expressed her gratitude. I'm glad I could help. Thinking of the young faces Kirigiri had seen during the stream, Butterfly Kane showed a relieved smile. The situation had been bad. That's why she hadn't appeared herself and had focused on preparing the explosives instead. Butterfly Kane uploaded item, explosive pack M4. Kirigiri didn't say much more. Words couldn't express her thanks better than action. She would do everything she could when it mattered. Kirikyuko started the stream. When the feed went live, Kirigiri appeared in view. Long, light purple hair, a cold, unreadable expression. Everyone, I have a solution, she announced. She scanned the people bound before her, ignoring the fear in their eyes. To be honest, I don't trust any of you right now. Section 119, Kirigiri Kyuko's expression was faint as she spoke, her voice low and steady. After Enoshima Junko's bewitching performance the night before, she couldn't bring herself to trust the others. Everyone except Ugami Sakura, that is. Bonds in the original story meant nothing here. She and the others had not lived through those events together. Trust based on imagined history was worthless. It was safer, she decided, to rely on force. The people in the library, visible on the live stream with Natsume Yuu and the others watching, were still tied to the wall ahead. Their protests rose at once. Don't leave us here. Untie the ropes at least. I don't want to wait here. We might understand your concerns, but please, untie us. Even though they were bound, there was no real hatred in their voices. Junko's nameless, devilish temptation had touched them too. They were tempted to distrust those around them. Being tied up strangely felt safer than being free and vulnerable. For your safety, Kirigiri said, scanning the room, I'll have Ugami untie you. Don't disappoint me. She turned to Ugami Sakura beside her. If Junko were to reappear from elsewhere, leaving everyone untied would be like turning sheep loose in a wolf den. I'm going to fetch something. You can go out after that. Where are you going? Nagi Makoto asked, watching her back with curiosity. He hadn't been able to open the doors yesterday, but somehow Kirigiri had a way today. He and the others wanted to know what she had in mind. I don't know, Ugami Sakura shrugged. Kirigiri was inscrutable. After yesterday's performance, she seemed like a mist, hard to read. Whatever it is, she wouldn't do it if she wasn't confident. Togami Byakuya's lips compressed. Their limbs had numbed from being bound overnight. Muscles complained as he moved. We should go see. Daihe Tianwen-tu said nothing elaborate. Better to see things with one's own eyes than to guess. The ropes were untied, and one by one they moved out of the library. Outside, Kirigiri stood with a pile of wrapped bundles before her, thick, crude packages tied together like quilts. This looks like dynamite packs from old movies, Nagi said hesitantly. Is that even possible? Yasuhiro Hagakure waved a dismissive hand and smiled nervously. Even if they were, why would Junko leave something like that lying around? It's dynamite, Togami answered flatly, surprise and calculation in his eyes behind the glasses. As the heir of a conglomerate, he'd seen enough to recognize gunpowder and demolition charges. Seeing the bundles, he was certain, which made the situation odder. Where had someone acquired so much explosive? The second floor had been under several pairs of eyes all night. If there had been gunpowder stashed, someone should have spotted it. The others reacted with disbelief. If Togami could identify it so confidently, then it had to be real. Yet who would plant such obvious explosives, and why? "You're here," Kirigiri said without turning. "Help me carry these to the stairwell." She looked back at Ugami Sakura. She couldn't move that much herself. She needed Ugami's terrifying strength to handle the load. It was fortunate she'd already convinced Ugami yesterday, otherwise this would have been difficult. "I understand," Ugami answered. Her eyes flicked over Kirigiri with a hint of surprise. She hadn't expected the small, composed girl to take such a blunt approach, tying everyone up last night, and now bringing explosives to blow the doors. She bent and hoisted 4 heavy bundles with ease and led the way toward the stairwell. "Where on earth did you get these?" Nagi called after her, unable to keep the question in. Everyone's ears perked up. None of them had seen Kirigiri go out during the night, yet here she was, with enough dynamite to open a heavy door. It felt like a miracle. Kirigiri's heels clicked as she walked. Her voice was cold and crisp. "I refused to answer." The blunt refusal froze the room. It was so characteristically direct that no one knew how to respond. They had expected at least a half explanation, some invented story, but Kirigiri's refusal left them awkward and silent. From the edges of the group, someone offered commentary to fill the gap. "Yu's move turned out to be useful," Doma Umaru observed. "It's also very Kirigiri," Chitanda Eru added, emphasizing the girl's straightforwardness. Saiko Busujima glanced at the tied bundles and the controlled way Kirigiri directed the operation. "In a place like this, any leniency only fuels suspicion," she said. Saiko Busujima, for her part, admired the method. Human hearts could be set on edge by the smallest provocation. Why waste time trying to understand them when it was better to deal with the enemy first? Yotsuya Miko said softly, "Humans are sometimes more terrifying than ghosts." Miko, sitting on the street with a friend after buying daifuku, let out a small sigh. As someone who could see the dead, her words carried weight. Ghosts at least followed rules she didn't understand. People could change with just a few words. While they talked, Kirigiri Kyoko and Ugami Sakura had already reached the stairwell. The others waited back. Only one person was needed to light the charge, and there was no point in crowding the operation. "You go first, and watch out for them," Kirigiri told Sakura, unshouldering a satchel of explosives. It made sense to have Ugami Sakura guard such a dangerous item. "Okay," Sakura nodded, asking no questions. She'd already seen enough of Kirigiri Kyoko's oddness to stop prying. The main thing was to get out of there quickly. Kirigiri studied the stairwell, thinking where to place the satchel. The charge wouldn't cut through steel pillars. The only weak points were where the wall met the pillars. If she blew those connections, Sakura could pry an opening, just like yesterday. Kirigiri pressed the satchel tight against the wall and produced the ignition unit Natsume Yuu had given her. A hiss, then the fuse burned. A strange metallic smell slid down the stairwell. "Run, Kirigiri Kyoko!" Asahina Aoi shouted from a distant room. Kyoko didn't hesitate. She spun and dashed back toward the group. The moment she reached the doorway, a tremendous bang split the air. The building shuddered. Thick smoke and dust poured down the passage like a long, coiling dragon, filling it in an instant. Inside the rooms, people began to cough. Cough! Cough! In the surveillance room, Enoshima Junko felt the tremor beneath her feet and saw the flash from the third-floor stairwell. "What's going on?" she murmured, then snapped to a conclusion. "Explosives." Her carefully shaped brows drew together. Where had they gotten explosives? Junko's knack for gathering information was unmatched, but this time she couldn't trace the source. If Kyuko still retained memories from before the brainwashing, perhaps she'd kept notes Enoshima didn't know about. That could explain some things. But where would these old-fashioned charges come from, and how had they been brought into a sealed space? She scanned the external feeds. No one was approaching from outside. Did they come from underground? For a moment she wondered if the future foundation had dug a tunnel. The second-floor cameras had been destroyed. She had no visual on that area. Biting her polished thumbnail between her teeth, Junko considered possibilities and rejected one. The explosions were not the future Foundation's doing. Even in a collapsed world, they wouldn't be using such outdated devices. It's almost as if something is helping her, she whispered, frowning so tightly it looked like it might split her forehead. Then, a flash of insight cracked through her thoughts. She remembered Kyoko's strange behavior the day before, the moments when her gaze lingered, the odd, distracted looks. Eliminating the impossible left one conclusion. Kyoko had been implanted with some kind of chip that let her perceive things Junko couldn't. That could explain how she retained memories after her amnesia. But the explosives, their origin, still eluded her. The moment Kyoko and Ugami appeared again on the feed, Junko pushed aside her curiosity. She had to think about her position. If the stairwell was breached again, her location on the fourth floor would be exposed. She couldn't afford to be surprised. She considered Ogami Sakura's breathing technique. It was impressive, but it demanded exceptional physical condition. Junko had studied and even tried to replicate the method. Compared to ordinary girls, her fitness was decent. But against Ikusaba Mukuro or Ogami Sakura, she was nowhere near their level. Against that kind of opponent, there was no way to win in direct combat. She smiled, a pale, angelic curve. No, she wouldn't let them end this easily. Her black-booted feet tapped the floor as she began the final preparations. For those who broke her rules, Junko wasn't going to yield.